This is a 2020 GMC Sierra 1500 SLT 4x4, and we're gonna do front brake pads and rotors. If you just want to do front brake pads, then you need to remove these little clips right here. These little things. With some needle nose pliers, pull them out of the pins. These are the pins. They go all the way through to the other side, and they go right here. See the little hole there? One there, and there's another one right there. Pull those little pins out of there, some little clips, and you can get yourself a pair of needle nose. Hopefully they're not frozen in there. If they're frozen in there, then you have to put some pinching on them to get them out. But these aren't frozen. I can just push them halfway, like so. Push in on the spring a little bit, and then you can pull this pin out. Careful of this spring right here. Okay, so it doesn't go bunk. All right, so pull that out and put your finger on here and hold that spring in there. All right, you pulled the pin out, got the spring came out, and I pulled the other pin out. Now, if you're just gonna do pads, I don't recommend just doing pads. I always like doing rotors, get a better brake job. And then you got to push these pads in, push the pad in that way. This pad goes that way, this pad comes towards you because it's 4 pistons, okay? 2 on each side. And what you can do is get your screwdriver in there, push that pin, that pad towards you. I don't know how you can get in there. You need to get a good spot. Maybe my screwdriver's too big. Get in there and there we go. Pushing this one in. Then you get behind the pad. And once you get, I did the metal part, so once you push the metal part in towards the pistons, then you can get behind the material and pry on the material. Try not to put any nicks in your rotor. All right. Just push them in as best you can. I think this one's in all the way. Yep. Pad's pretty sloppy. And once you get them pistons in all the way, then you can take this pad, pull it right out. They wanted new brakes. They got a brake pulsation, so we're gonna put new pads on it too. All right, so I guess that's what it looks like with the pistons pushed all the way in. Now I'm gonna do the same thing to this one. Try to push that pad in there a little bit so I can get my screwdriver behind here and pry the pad towards the pistons, okay? All right, so if I push this pad in, push the pistons in, and it's gonna push these pistons right back out, so I just wasted my time. So I pound a little chisel in there just to hold that pad up against those pistons to keep the pistons from coming out. So now I got my little gaps, and I can put my screwdriver in there, pry against the side of the rotor and the pad material itself. And do that equally on the top and the bottom. If you want to make it a little bit faster, you can undo your bleeder while you're pushing the pistons in. That way you can flush your fluid at the same time if you want. Otherwise, you can just pry them in. And I think they're all the way in. So now I can remove my pad. Bingo. Okay. And now I can take my chisel out and remove the other pad. Okay. So if you're going to do pads, that's fine. So if you're just going to do pads, you want to get yourself a little wire brush and scrape it across in there, the surfaces that the pad actually sits on. And then when you get them decently clean, top and bottom, then you can go ahead and put a little film of Sil Glide in there Try not to get it on the rotor. And just, you know, put a little bit on your pad on those spots on the sides. And then go ahead and slide your pad in there. And then clean up your pins and put some Silverado or anti-seize on them slides where they go into the mounting of them so they don't freeze up, and then put your pins in, okay? So top and bottom, inside and outside. Anti-seize on your pins. Make sure you put your little clips in. And that'd be how you do just pads, okay? We're not doing just pads, I'm gonna do rotors also. So, you wanna take the rotor off. There's a 18 millimeter bolt here. And there's another one down here. Take these two out, and then you have your whole caliper assembly in your hand. Don't let it hang by your brake line. So get something to hold on to, like a bungee cord or one of those S hangers, okay? And once you get the caliper off, then you can go ahead and remove the stupid fasteners. And that's a T30. Make sure you put some penetrant on it to help soak them. Here's my caliper mounting bolts. Got my rotor retainer. Rotor came loose. If the rotor's bonded on there, then you have to smack it with a mini sledge. Be careful not to hit the studs. If you're replacing the rotor, it's okay to hit the rotor surface, okay? And we got our fabulous, beautiful hub bearings. Nice and rusty. It's a stepped hub bearing, which means it's lower in the center than here and here. So what you want to do is shine these surfaces up in the center and on the outside. Try not to grind them down or anything. Just clean them up, get them nice and shiny. If there's big chunks on there, you got to remove the chunks, because if you leave rust in there, rust is going to space the rotor out, not make it sit true. And by not being true, it's going to wobble a little bit, and then it's going to give you a pulsation. You don't want that. I got the hub as clean as I can get it. All right, so after you get done doing this, then you do is put some anti-seize in here, light fill anti-seize. Go ahead and clean your caliper up. If your caliper pistons are leaking fluid, then you need to replace them. Put some Silverado on the mounts for the pads on the sides up in here. Okay, right there, and there, and there, and there. Same thing on the top side. All right. Put your rotor on, make sure you wash them, get that chipping oil off of them. Use some soap and water, or some brake clean on a rag, wipe them down. All right. Okay, all right. There's so many different things on this bolt torque. I'm gonna go 80 foot-pounds on the caliper bolt torque, okay? 80 foot-pounds, all right? My new pads came with a squeak indicator, a sensor. What you do is this, is you plug it inside that. It just slips right in, and that spring goes in these notches. Okay, and this is on the driver's side, not the passenger side. When I do the driver's side, I'll show you. So it just goes in there like that. Not like this, because then it hits the rotor, like that. The metal part goes into there, all right? And they give me all new stuff. All right, so there's no inner and there's no outer on these. They're both the same. So you want to put the squeak indicators towards the rotation of the rotor. So if this is going to be the inside one, and the rotor rotates this way, so you want to put that on the bottom. Okay. I already got my lube in there, but I'm just going to rub a little bit on here anyway. And then I'm going to slide them in there. And hopefully the pistons are pushed in all the way. I have the inner one in, so now I got the outer one, squeaker on the bottom towards the rotation. You install them, make sure you install them square, otherwise they'll bind. So get them right about there, line them up, and then you can get your pins. Put a little bit of lube on your pins, so when they go through, they won't bond and rust, corrode. The bottom one's in. I installed my clip. I like the factory ones. I don't like the new ones. All right, so what I do is put some lube on, and I'll stick them in through the back side, so that way some anti-seize gets inside that hole, and then I'll stick this one through. Before I stick it all the way through, I want to get my spring. And I'm going to clip it underneath, like so. Push it in there and get those little arms in there to hold the pads out. Push it in. Gotta get this out a little bit. All right. Now, I can push my pin in, and it's got to go underneath that. Okay. Exactly how it goes. Pretty simple. You got your clips in. Now I'll go do the other side, and I'll show you that wear indicator sensor. All right, I'm on the driver's side. Remove your little clips. Remove your pin. Remove your spring. Remove your pin. Push your pad that way. Put your punch in there. Push your pad that way. The pad's loose now. Disconnect your sensor. Got a lock on, got to push the lock up. And what I do is I stick a little screwdriver in there and I pick up on a tab and then disconnect it. Otherwise you can pull off the lock all the way. All right. So the sensor's in the pad, so you're not going to be able to pull the pad out because the sensor's in the back of it. All right. So what you can do is pull the sensor out of it and then go ahead and when you're going together, push it in from behind. But I think if you're going to do the rotor, then I'd remove the caliper and then you take that pad and just push it that way, push it out that way. But if you're just going to do pads, then you'll have to pull this sensor off of the pad. So I'll see what I can see how hard that is. If you're going to just do the pads, leave the pins in before you try disconnecting this. Because it's a little stiff in there, and I chipped it removing it, but I got a new one. A little tough coming out, but it does come out. And that's how it fastens in there with that spring. Alright. So, there you have it. So, if you're gonna go ahead and remove the caliper, I'm sure there's plenty of room behind to do it. You can put the pad in there with the sensor in it when you go back together, or you can put the pad in there and then put the sensor afterwards. And again, those nice hub bearings. Gotta be the worst part of the job. All right, I had the caliper off, so I took the pad and I put it in from behind with the sensor already on it. So that way I didn't have to fight with nothing. And it went pretty good. So I mean, I ended up plugging it in and putting it back into the little holder. I didn't push the lock on because it's already kind of locked anyway. So, all right, now everything's good. Everything's together. My clips are staying in pretty good. They're not falling out. Kind of questioned them, but nah. they're good. All right. Next thing you need to do is put your tires on, torque them to 140 foot-pounds, lower it down to the ground, go inside the vehicle, pump the brakes up a couple times, start it up, and make sure you got a decent firm pedal before you put it in drive or reverse. And that will complete your front brakes, okay? Hopefully I helped you out. And if I did, hopefully you can help me out by subscribing to me, and I appreciate it. Thank you. Make sure your brake hose is not twisted. Make sure it's a nice, clean, straight shot. All right? Make sure it's not whooped, because if it is, then you got it twisted. All right?